Welcome to the Book of Life, a show about Jewish books, music, film, and web. I'm Heidi Estrin. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries. Donna Jo Napoli is past winner of the Sidney Taylor Book Award for Stones in Water, and also got a Sidney Taylor honor for The King of Mulberry Street. Her new novel for teens and adults is Storm, in which a girl named Seba ends up stowing away on Noah's Ark. It's a fascinating exploration of daily life in desperate circumstances. I spoke to Donna Jo by phone at her home near Philadelphia. Donna Jo Napoli, welcome to the Book of Life.
I'm very happy to be here.
Why retell the story of Noah's Ark?
Why? I don't know if I retold the story of Noah's Ark. I more asked myself, what would it be like to try to start all over again? The whole idea of being wiped out and starting over again is common, and I guess that's what all these many novels about nuclear destruction are aimed at exploring. But they are in the flood tradition. Of course, a flood presented amazing opportunities in terms of Noah's Ark. But if it wasn't Noah's Ark, it would have had to have been something else. Whether you're in some rocket ship flying around while the world is being destroyed, or whether you're in an ark on the sea. I don't know. I guess I didn't really choose to write Noah's Ark. I chose to write a destruction story and a start over story. And what does it mean to you? Why is it worth it to start over?
That's very interesting. I didn't expect that answer.
What did you expect?
Well, I guess I expected more that Noah's Ark itself would be the starting point, rather than the idea of the starting over and the dystopia kind of a thing. So in that case, why did you choose Noah's Ark rather than invent your own scenario?
Oh, I love stories that have a long history to them, because I feel like they wouldn't have a long history to them if they weren't tapping into something that really disturbs us or resonates within us or brings us great joy. That is, they are important to us. And so I like to tap into that. Dealing with Noah's Ark allows me to tap into something that everybody thinks they know something about, but then to try to offer them a different perspective on it. It's like, I'm a linguist. When people talk about making up languages, constructed languages, when you look at the languages that people construct, pretty much they are the language that the people already know, just in disguise, with different lexical items or a few rules inverted or something like that. But really, they're just that in disguise. And that's what I feel about constructed worlds. I think often when we make up our own world, it's just a world we already know in disguise. And that can be terrific fun. And it can be more fun if you break the rules, if you take away some of the fundamental things that hold the world that you know together. And then you have to construct a whole new logic. That interests me much more than just a new world in which the societal rules are different, because that's really just our world in disguise, I think. So I'd rather use a world that people know but actually show them that there's always another way to look at it. And I like that, looking at it from a new perspective. When I first started thinking, I thought, oh, my story's going to be 40 days and 40 nights. Of course, if it rains 40 days and 40 nights, it's going to take a long time for that water to go away. And yet I had never thought about it. I had read the book of Genesis, but I had just never thought about it. So it's like I had glossed over the things that were there. And going back and trying to actually be there, feel like what it would be to be on it, it made me take very seriously the passing of every day. I would bet for a lot of people who think that they've read Genesis well, Noah's Ark would have been 40 days and 40 nights, unless I was just more dense than most people.
So, why did you choose to add an outsider to the story? Your main character is not a biblical character. She's someone of your own invention. So why did you choose to add her rather than tell it from the perspective of Noah or one of his family members, one of the official characters of the story?
Right. This is going to probably surprise you again, but I do it more out of respect. That is, if you've got a character that people know and that recurs in a variety of different places in the stories that they know, in the things that they hold dear, then you better be very carefully coherent with what the other stories are. If you've got a character that nobody knows, then you're free to let this character behave in ways that might interest you to explore. So that's what Seba did for me. She let me look at the animals and the suffering of life in general in a way that I might not have been able to do as freely if I had been constrained by trying to deal with characters that people felt they already knew.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's another character who is not officially part of the original story. Og, king of Bashan, is not from the biblical story, but there's a midrash that he rides on the roof of the ark. So can you talk about your decision to include him in the story?
He was just lovely. Number one, I love the idea of a giant. I love the idea of somebody who you don't really know whether he outwitted Noah and Noah's family or not, and I would suspect that it was not. I would suspect that on an ark for so long, you know what's going on. And I found that interesting too, the whole question of what do you allow yourself to acknowledge and what do you have to not allow yourself to acknowledge, given the situation that Noah was in and that his family was in. And so finding him was like a little miracle. I could have used him more inside the ark, but I didn't want to in terms of, number one, he's supposed to be on top of the ark in the Midrash. And number two, he also has his own history. He is a king, not in the Bible, but he is still in stories that people know. So why did I include him? Boy, poor Seba. Imagine what her life would have been like without him. I just didn't see her being able to survive psychologically without him, even if she might have managed it survival-wise.
Yeah, when you put it that way, too, I feel sorry for her if he wasn't there.
Yeah. And also, he allowed me to make the story be a love story. And I love the idea that a story about the end of everything is also a love story. Because without love, why do you keep going? Like, that's what all of Noah's family had to face. Why were they willing to get on that ark and face a world with no one at the other end of this flood if there was no love. It was so crucial to them to love each other. And that's what was so difficult about being on the ark, this inability to act out that love with each other. I think Noah's story is about love. And, of course, it's also about God's love and love for God. I need a dog.
Of all the animals on the ark,
yes,
the bonobos come to life as characters more than any other. So talk about your decision to include them and feature them so heavily.
Yes. Okay. I love to write stories in which there are animals, and I take the animals very seriously in terms of I do a lot of research on them. And it's not that I have a hierarchy in my head about our closest cousins being more important than other animals. Not at all. I've written stories about frogs and about warthogs and about lions. I mean, I love the natural history. I love learning all that. But here, I guess I needed the kind of intelligence that would allow her some help. I didn't see how she could climb into the ark without help. And so originally, the bonobos were there purely to get her in. But when she was in there, then I had to face what was the ark like inside. And then I realized she was in that cage with them. And then suddenly I was exploring them a lot more. If she had wound up in a cage with giraffes or wolves or something like that, I would have been exploring them much more. But I had to get her in through that porthole, and I didn't know how else to do it.
So it was a practical...
Right. And I could have used Og right at the beginning. He could have helped her. But if I had used him right at the beginning, it would have been much less lovely than finding him later. I felt like he came at a cracking point. It was like a gift, a gift from God, if you will, something to just keep her going. But bonobos have fascinated me because my daughter, Eva, is a veterinarian. And the summer she was 16, she did work at the London Zoo, volunteer work. And she worked in the small mammal house, working primarily with bonobos. So she taught me a lot about bonobos, and she and I wrote a little picture book called Bobby the Bold about a bonobo at a zoo. So bonobos are kind of dear to me. Once you do the research on them, you have to love them. It's like they're sort of what people would be like if people weren't so full of aggression. They're very unaggressive, and they resolve all kinds of conflicts through, people would say, through sex, which is true. But if you look at sex as a manifestation of affection, then they resolve their problems through love, which is quite wonderful.
Okay. Now, bonobos are well known for their sexual behavior, which is part of all aspects of their social lives, is what I gather. So was that a challenge to write about them in a novel aimed at young people?
It was indeed. And on my first draft, I did no censorship of myself. And then once I had my draft of my story, and I asked myself, who is this story mainly going to speak to? At that point, I had to ask myself, exactly how far did I want to go? And I decided at that point that I hoped I was writing it for young people and adults, not for children, but for people for whom sexuality is an important part of their concerns about their identity, even if it isn't part of their habits or experiences at that point in their life. And so if I'm going to write for those people, then I have to be careful not to put in someone's face something that they might not be willing or ready or comfortable dealing with. And why do I say that? Things don't have to be comfortable, and you can certainly close a book. But I like to write things in such a way that if you're ready to understand it in one way, you can. And if you're not ready to understand it in that way, you can understand it how you're ready to understand it, and you're still getting what I want you to be getting out of it. And I felt that if I passed a certain line, it becomes about sex to someone who isn't ready for sex. Because sex, they don't understand it yet in a certain way. And so it just becomes a sex book. And that's not what I wanted to write. So I use pulling back or ending the scene in a certain way. Yeah.
Okay. There was a very nice review of Storm on the blog called Life is Like a Library, written by my friend Kathy Pinchuk. And she posed the question, do you think the world today would qualify to be flooded? So I wanted to ask what you think of that, and if you think it qualified to be flooded in the first place.
Yeah. I think that one of the big questions of life is how much you're willing to give up in order to be decent. And I think this question will always be with us. There are always things that you could do to make your life better that would harm others. You always have this knowledge, and you have to work at being a decent person. And you will have times when you are stronger than other times. And therefore, we will always have evil around us. So should there be floods to wipe us out and start us over again, I think we'll always go back to dealing with evil. I mean, I think we'll never get rid of it. I certainly did not have the people on that ark all be perfectly good people. I had them having their own struggles over decency. So, you know, if the flood didn't help before, will it help again? I am a complete pacifist. I would never say wiping life out is a solution.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm very interested in evil and in what you have to combat. I actually found Ham a really interesting character when I was reading through Genesis. He seemed like such a tormented guy, and I'm interested in tormented people.
Okay, well, I really enjoyed Storm, and it's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Well, it was so nice of you. I'm so grateful to you for doing this. And yeah, and I feel so lucky that now I know you.
Thank you. That's
okay,
very
dear.
Sweet. There are so many ways to connect with the Book of Life. Fan us at facebook.com/Book of Life Podcast. Follow us at twitter.com/Book of Life Pod. Email us at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 561-206-2473. You can also listen to the latest episode by phone at 916-313-3820. And of course, find links to everything at bookoflifepodcast.com. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida at cbiboca.org and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band at freilachmakers.com. Thanks for listening and happy reading.